Good. Okay. Well, welcome to this week's weekly video interview with one of the key industry figures, and for the UK wine trade, one of the most established and most experienced figures in our industry would be Michael Saunders, who's from Chief Executive of Bibendum. So, welcome, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Richard. How are you going?
No, not bad, sir. Not bad. And where are you? You're holed up in Shropshire, right?
I'm holed up in the Welsh borders. Yeah, that's where I generally spend my weekends, and have been able to spend probably my record time ever, actually, in one stretch in my house. I don't remember more than a fortnight staying in my own bed, but it's been over 2 months now. So
you've had to get used to gardening. You've had to get used to gardening again.
Oh, Jesus, I've been under the cost to do that. Yeah, I can't get away.
Yeah, well, so obviously with the Bibendum, you're a very multifaceted business and involved in both the on-trade and off-trade. But can you give us an indication before we talk about how the situation has evolved? Can you just perhaps give us an indication of how the company went into this crisis and what sort of position you were in sort of the end of last year, beginning of this year?
Yeah, so I suppose that, the timing was pretty rubbish for everybody, Richard, but we, as you know, the Bibendum journey has been quite interesting in the last few years. And since I came back into the business after a very short time out I arrived back in April, May 2018, the business was really flying. I mean, when I say flying, really flying in every aspect. So, it was a bit of a shame to see the loss of momentum when lockdown happened, but we were quite prepared. We sort of saw it coming, and so we shut our office very quickly. We've planned all the homework working, and we have a large number of people working from home anyway, so it wasn't a shock to the way we do business. So, I just felt desperately sorry for our customers, really, who had to shut down, and no one could possibly have prepared for the situation that, of course, we all face into. So, our on-trade business is as good as disappeared. There's some great examples of some activity, which I'm sure we'll cover later. But then the two other sides of our business are doing really well, actually. So that's the business that supplies the multiple retailers, and we have a business that you're well acquainted with, Walker and Woodhouse, which supplies the independent wine merchants around the UK, which for a section of it, not the wholesalers, but for the retailers, they're doing incredibly well, which is very heartening to see, actually.
And I guess you over the years having those different strands to the business, I suppose, has always been part of what Bibendum has done. I mean, do you think that in a way has given you a stronger position to be in, to have the multi-channel route?
Well, I've always believed in it, and frankly, back in the day in the 80s, we fell into it slightly by accident. Like, if I was being brutally honest, we didn't really plan to have a multi-channel business as we do now. But yes, it's given us enormous strength, actually, because it helps with our suppliers in the immediate crisis period. It's enabled our suppliers to have a business with multiple retailers where that's relevant, and encouragingly, our business with the independents, where they can sell handcrafted wine, has accelerated well, and it's great to offer some solace to our suppliers, especially the artisanal smaller suppliers who really, they're facing into a really difficult period themselves because their international markets have gone, not just the UK market. So it's comforting to see. So maybe by accident, maybe by design, we're in a space where we have some business running, which is great. Apologies, the landline's going in the background.
You're a popular man, Michael.
No, it's not for me, I don't think.
Okay, but I suppose this is the extraordinary situation that we all find ourselves in. That this is a global situation. So, as you say, obviously you have the concerns within the UK market, but you have a role, I suppose, to play within the global wine supply chain and being able to keep your part of it at least going.
Well, I think that's right, and actually, I referred to you had an interview with Laura Catena the other day, and Laura's a great personal friend over the years through business, and I believe relationships incredibly important both ways, for me to my customers, but from us to our suppliers as well. And it's not just business; it's they're families, and that's how I like Bibendum to be considered. So whatever we can do to help them is what we are trying to do. And it may be smaller, but at least it's something. I'm privileged to be back at Bibendum under the ownership I have. So I can look at my customers in the proverbial eye through Zoom and say, we will be here to support you in the UK market when times open up again, which they seemingly are in the next few weeks. I'm delighted to be able to say.
Perhaps that might be worth just touching on for a little moment for those people who aren't aware of Bibendum's sort of like corporate structure. Can you just talk us through the CNC side of things and how that plays for you as a company?
Yeah, so CNC, which is a FTSE 250 listed business, acquired Bibendum in March 2018, and that's when they asked me to come back in, rightly or wrongly, to run the business. CNC has a number of divisions. It owns Magnus Cider, it owns Bulmer Cider in Ireland, it owns Tennant's Lager in Scotland, and has a distribution business in Ireland and Scotland, and my sister company in the UK is Matthew Clark.
Yeah.
The advantage for us, I think, is they are a really well-established drinks business. It floats my boat in the sense that they run a very decentralized business. So underneath an agreed plan, I'm enfranchised to run the business and really get Bibendum firing in the markets that we traditionally have and the areas that we really want to focus on. So we are, I think, in a very enviable position. I think I said to you before, I sort of sometimes feel like sitting on a ship in a calm port, where some of my peers that's they're out in the raging seas. So I don't take that for granted in any way at all, because we've got to perform. But there has been great comfort sharing experience and actions over this crisis period.
Excellent. Can we just perhaps drill a little bit into what you are doing in the parts of the business that are fully operational, being the multiple side and the off-trade, I suppose. Can you just talk us through what trends you're seeing there and what demands and what you've been able to work with in terms of the multiples independent?
Well, demand's been pretty strong, as you've reported from several people you've interviewed, Richard. And I think the challenge there is to have brilliant customer service. The problems have more been around supply chain, especially initially when everyone was trying to figure out what the new norm was, what was happening with the shipping lanes, how producers were managing to expedite orders when they probably got made some of their facilities shut down part-time, full-time. So it's taken a while to work through that, but we really in that sector took the focus on not doing what we're normally trying to do at the start, which is sort of trying to get new listings and new opportunities, but really supporting our customers and getting stuff onto shelf is in the best possible way that we could. And looking back at all the reports, we've done an unbelievable job on that, and I'm pleased to say that our internal service metrics to the multiple retailers are utterly brilliant, actually. And then in the Walker and Woodhouse sector, so with the independent merchants, we've been really thinking hard about what wines are best to suit them in the current environment. So we've probably stretched more wines to them than we have done in the past. So some of the wines and agencies that we kept more specifically for the on-trade, we have pushed out more into the independent retailers. And we decided, really, I think my sort of big call there was, unlike many of my peers who've decided to react by developing a B2C business, I decided not to. I took the view that now was the time when we could really reinforce the relationships with the people who do sell them to consumers. So rather than to compete with them, we took the view to support them. And I think, I hope that'll come back with some interest in years to come.
Yeah, and I guess you had that advantage of having such a established independent roots.
Yeah.
As well. So so in terms of how that's now playing out, I mean, obviously we've been through the first wave of demand, and then clearly wine sales are still maintaining their position in the off trade. I mean, are you now seeing some of the buyers looking further afield, seeing this as being, you know, we now need to see this as being over the next few months, or are we still kind of like firefighting from one week to the next?
I think firefighting has sort of come to an end some weeks ago, actually, and I think the multiple retailers did a fantastic job of getting back to situation normal in terms of stocking their shelves and having the whole supply chain sorted. Once they had to prioritize loo rolls and flour and all the stuff we read about that weren't on shelf. So I get that, but I think they've done a brilliant job in getting back into situation normal. My hope is that in the other sector with the independent retailers, I hope that this legacy of this awful time we've all been through will be that more people buy off them more regularly. Now they've got used to buying online or using them as local suppliers, because I think it's incredibly healthy for our industry long term. As you know yourself, Richard, I've been sort of bemoaning the lack of choice in out in the country, and I think that if there is a tiny bit of comfort from what's happened, I think as long as this carries on, I think the trade is going to benefit over the medium to long term through the thriving of this sector. So I think it's in principle, I think it's deeply encouraging.
Yeah, and there's been amazing statistics, you know, showing the number of new people who have been shopping online for wine for the first time, but also shopping online with many of those independent wine merchants that you mentioned. It's, you know, these aren't just existing customers who are buying more. This is actually new people coming into premium wine.
And I think there's some really cool stuff being seen as well. And none of it is sort of truly revolutionary, but there was one customer of ours who, like many, did an online tasting. So they pre-sold a 6-pack of one producer's wines, got about, I don't know, however many, 20 to 40 people to buy the 6-pack, had it delivered, and then my producer in South Africa actually did an online tasting for an hour and took all the questions. And that, if you think about that pre-crisis, that was quite difficult to do, because the motivation from the retailer, the motivation from the wine producer wasn't really there to do it, and it's very heartening to see that. And that means that producer can if they did the job half well, which I believe they did, they can get another 20 to 40 advocates of their wines. And I think that's great. I think that's a really great step forward, because to translate what goes on in the vineyard with these artisan producers to the end consumer is not easy to do.
No. So have you noticed, I mean, it seems as though there's a slight difference in the off-trade between what we're hearing from the multiple side, where the big brands, and there's perhaps been an understandable, in the same way that people are stocking up on things like Quaker Oats and Heinz soups, they're also stocking up on perhaps more of the kind of the well-known wine brands and the private labels, pricing perhaps a little bit lower. Whereas on the independent side, it's the flip side. That's where we're seeing is that something that you've seen as well?
Yeah, I recognise that, and I think that probably people default to situations that they trust. So with the independent retailer, they've got someone to talk to, so they trust Richard in your case, or Michael in my case. Yeah. And when they're either on their online or in store with the supermarkets, they're probably going to things that they recognise, be they brands, or be they brands like Rioja or Chablis, or be they more the supermarkets increasingly good offer under own labels. So we're seeing that, and obviously the dynamics change slightly because a lot of the retailers aren't doing their big promotional pushes at the moment.
Exactly.
I think that has changed the orientation of what people are buying as well.
Yeah. There's less impulse purchasing going on. It's more, yeah. So obviously, a lot of your business, a lot of people know Bibendum for your on-trade side. So can you just perhaps give us an idea of what you have been able to do there, and how, if you can be working with any customers, or what steps you've taken to work with some of the customers still?
Well, there are very few customers open. Let's be frank, and those that are only for off-trade, because for those not in the UK, everything's shut by law. But that said, there are some people doing some incredibly innovative things in terms of take home. And there's one example I was thinking of before this chat, Richard. I don't know if you've heard of well, you probably have heard of a guy called Heath Ball up at a pub in.
Yeah, I know him very well. Yes.
Well, yeah, he's pretty well known. But the Red Lion Sun in Highgate, he has done some absolutely amazing things in terms of generating sales of his food. But importantly, in what I'm working, or my team's working with him on, is selling great quality wines. And I have to say, in some quantity as well. And for anybody who's interested, he's on YouTube, and there's some extraordinary videos of how he's actually trying to attract sales. But what he's doing is selling really good quantities of really good quality wine, and doing it with a sense of humour. And I think the locals are benefiting from it. And so that we're seeing that in the last few weeks, we're seeing that accelerating quite quickly, actually. So there's there are a large number of people opening up for take-home as we move towards the end of lockdown.
Yeah, and CNC and yourselves, you've developed this new app, haven't you?
I'm delighted to say it was the Bibendum team doing the right thing for CNC and the wider community. So we were thinking, and I can't claim any responsibility for this, but very proud of the team who did it. We're thinking, how can we help our customers in this difficult period? Because some of them are facing into existential crisis. There's no doubt about that. So we developed an app called Local, and Local does two things. One is it allows people to put up their offer online for takeaway, and we charge them literally a tiny fee, transaction fee, rather than having to take all the cost of setting up a website and doing it themselves, or going to one of the third-party delivery companies who take quite large percentages. And that's accelerating really quite quickly. The second thing that this app does, which will be, I hope, of use to all our customers, it does provide an in-venue platform for people to order off their phones without any within the rules of social distancing. So
so when people come back, they can use that actually in the venues themselves.
Yeah, and it does everything for them, and it matches to tills. And actually now we're working with a couple of hotel groups on providing Local to them as well, and doing bigger things than just food and drink. So in terms of reception and all the other areas that a hotel has to cover. So I'm really proud of that, actually. And I think it does show, the innovation that, historically Bibendum's been well known for. And the other thing, I suppose, that, I have the privilege of chairing the Drinks Trust, which, for those not in this country, is our drinks industry charity. And some of my team who were put on furlough have gone into the Drinks Trust to work pro bono, obviously, while they're on phono, and really help drive the charity forward. So there's quite a lot of different stuff going on, and it's really very heartening to see. And I think it brings out the best of people sometimes, these sort of crises.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I know the Drinks Trust is the amount of activity, initiatives, and support there has been, from all sides of the drinks industry and hospitality towards. I mean, we've seen the same in America. We've seen the same in Australia and in South America.
It's really hard.
Yeah,
it's very heartwarming to see it. I suppose, again, I'm on a human level. I'm really, I'm really touched by how the communities come together to support people who've fallen on hard times, because the number of applications the Drinks Trust had was just simply staggering, and most of them work in our industry. So it's been a great privilege to be able to do something small to help so many people.
You've spoken a lot in the past about Bibendum's role as being more than just a drink supplier. Obviously, you provide a lot of training and you do a lot of data insights, and you're arguably one of the leading companies in the UK for being able to provide that data insight. Do you now see that as more and more, the July the 4th has been in the UK has been given as a possible date for some on-trade to return? Do you now, as a supplier, I mean, how do you start thinking about helping the trade come back? I mean, you mentioned there the ordering system that you have. I mean, are you now having to sort of think about whole new ways of working with your customers?
Well, they're simple things. There's simple things we're having to think through at the moment. And one of the first, not the first one, but one of the things, as an example, is how on earth do we hold a tasting with customers? Can you go into a room with a number of people and taste wine, spit wine, handle the same bottles? Question mark. We don't think so. So we're thinking, right, how do we actually do that? But I think more importantly, in the short term, when we look towards reopening, is we're trying to really think about what our customers need, because I don't think that's necessarily going to be the same thing as what they needed before. So I mentioned the hotel industry just now. You know, how are hotels going to work? What do they want? Are they going to have a bar? Are they going to have barman? Are they going to have, you know, the normal functions? Or is it going to be more like needing a selection of single serves, be it pre-mixed cocktails, interesting non-alcoholic drinks that are easy to send to people's rooms, or send to specific tables in the lobby, or, you know, I just think, so we're doing a lot of work on that. And, you know, yes, we have a good insights team, but, you know, there's not much insight you can get. What we're having to do is think about potential solutions and then work through it in a customized way for all our clients. And, you know, that's quite interesting in a way, because I think we could, you know, we may be able to be a bit innovative and a bit radical, and that's quite exciting for what can be quite a traditional industry.
Yeah, and I think actually there's a lot of talk, isn't there, within the restaurant trade of this concept of like not just reopening but actually relaunching, and there's actually an opportunity here potentially for restaurants to come back and using this safe distancing as part of the experience. You go there and it looks completely different, and the experience is very different, but it's not because it's a negative. It's actually, let's make it positive. And I suppose,
I'm a salesman. I've always have been a salesman. So you have to do things positively. But I think there are two things that, you know, that spring to mind. One is a really cool customer of mine the other day said, okay, Michael, the chances are that people are certainly for a period of time are going to need to order off an app. He said, at the moment, I've got a range of 50 gins and then supported by 20 different tonic options. He said, how on earth can I expect someone to swipe through 50 gins, and when they've finally gone back to the one they really wanted, then go through 20 tonic choices? He said, we're going to have to start to be a little bit more creative in how we give people choice within the realms of reasonable delivery. And the second thing is, which I hope the take-home process that's happened brings to bear, is that people can hopefully sell, you know, more expensive boutique-y wines at less brutal margins than have been prevalent in the trade. Now I know that people need to earn their money, but I'm really hopeful that, you know, some more expensive wine can be sold at more reasonable prices to deliver great cash profit to the business owners, and great wines to the customers who are spending the money in their restaurants. And, you know, those of us in the wine trade have been begging that for some time, and, you know, are we about to cross that line? That would be great.
Yeah, and there's also been some research, and I think CGA, the UK on-trade research analysts, have looked at some of the feedback from restaurateurs and pub owners, and I think one of the areas that they see is around having smaller menus, be it for food, and smaller menus for drinks. So if that is the case, I mean, if that puts more focus on yourselves being even more targeted and having your customer segmentation about what wines really work in which kind of outlets.
Yep. And I think it'll, well, yes is the simple answer. Okay. And a build on that is what I'm hoping we can see is more individuality, so that people like Heath Ball can have the courage not to do something because everyone else is doing it, but actually to say, what do we stand for? And I'm sure it's to say, you know, they do it for food really well, but I'd like to see that more in the drinks categories as well. You know, what do we really want to stick our values to, and what do we really want our customers to have? So if they don't have, say, generic bottom end Pinot Grigio, great, you know, but they've got to then have the help of people like Bibendum to say, on what they do and how they train their staff to circumnavigate any objections that may come, and that's pretty exciting potentially. Yeah. And I think this whole relaunch is, you know, if you know, it's been pretty difficult for everyone, I'm sure, who's listening to this. You know, the last 8-10 weeks have been horrible, actually, as you look at all the downsides. So I'm now this week, you know, as you can see stuff coming back again, you're starting to get my adrenaline flowing about what change we can do to make it better going forward, and not only the immediate term, but the medium to long term as well.
And I suppose one of the interesting things, actually, is to date, most of the tastings that we've seen, the online tastings, have happened through either suppliers like yourself, or it's been the independent wine merchants that have been able to do those. But I guess going forward, you know, the restaurant trade and bars now will have that opportunity too when they come back, to be able to engage with their customers in a completely new way, engage with producers and their suppliers, you know, which brings a whole new way of working.
Well, I think they're going, you know, I think they're going to have to, and we're going to help them as much as we possibly can, because the initial thing that they face into is giving their customers the confidence to come in, that they've got a you know, a secure environment to come into. And I think that one of the big problems, irrespective of when the government says, oh, you can open on July the 4th, or whatever it is to make sure that the community at large has the confidence to enter those venues and spend money, because, you know, if not, it's going to be a very, very long road back for our customers and everybody involved in the supply chain to them.
I mean, I know it's very hard to forecast what's going to happen by the end of the week, but I mean, how do you see the next few months playing out? I mean, do you look at this, are you still in kind of pessimistic mode, or I know you, Michael, surely optimistic mode?
I'm an eternal optimist, but I don't think we'll get, you know, very, very large scale business back until 2021 earliest. I think it's going to be quite a slow running. It all depends on the social distancing rules. And, you know, there's some very eloquent people, much more so than me, who are trying to say for the on-trade, can we have 1 meter distancing rather than 2? Because that'll make a radical difference to their numbers. Even so, we've got no business people traveling. You know, I think we need to get going quite soon to have any prospect of any Christmas parties in November and December, which are pretty important for our industry, our customers or ourselves or our suppliers. So I think it is going to be a slower road back. I think the other thing that's potentially quite interesting, where my optimistic side does kick in, is that I think there will be more sites available, maybe at more sensible rents or indeed turnover-based rents, that will allow a sort of, the next generation of flair entrepreneurs to come into the sector, be it restaurants or bars. And, you know, and they will change the rules. They will do something differently for 2020, given the current circumstance, not looking back. So, you know, I think that, you know, out of ashes, you do get phoenixes. And if that is the phoenix for our industry, hopefully will mean they buy interesting wines, want to do things in an interesting way, allow businesses like mine to get really involved to help them, you know, create what I hope, you know, what could be really engaging businesses for customers to visit.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, because I mean, I know that you know, there are some sort of quite harsh statistics that sort of say, you know, a good 30% of the on-trade may not come back. But I suppose, you know, just pick up on your point, that doesn't then reflect on the people who may come in to the industry.
Precisely. And you know, I'm so old now. I've seen a regeneration of this, you know, of all the various sectors I've worked in, you know, a number of times. So, you know, it's quite interesting. In the last month or so, there are a number of new projects that I and my team have been working on, and some of them look really, really cool. And with the right backing and support, they'll get away, and that'll be great. So, you know, that is my optimistic hat on. But I just do think there are going to be challenges. And, you know, I no more than you or anybody else can tell what the world's really going to look like, because I don't think we've got a bloody clue, frankly. Okay,
well, if I can throw another curveball at you, and in your role,
you're good at those.
I know, but you're obviously have your chairman role at the Wine and Spirit Trade Association, and you know, we've all obviously forgotten about this the word Brexit over the last 10 weeks, but you know, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know
I think. What are my thoughts? It's interesting, because I was having a conversation just over a week ago with the chief executive of the WSTA, who you know, Miles Beale, and he and his team, I have to say, have done an absolutely fabulous job over the crisis period. But we were talking about the need to refocus back onto Brexit, because that clock is ticking rather fast in the background. And, you know, the early signal which came out last week, I think, or maybe the end of the week before, that said that you know, the wine tariffs would remain in place, and in fact would be extended to everywhere, was not the news that we were wanting to hear. And I think Miles Miles is going to back very quickly to say to the government, the small amount of money it raises, why do you want to have this burden of administration on a sector that's struggling anyway, and why have the costs that that they don't need, and frankly doesn't make any difference to the enormous debt we face into. So I do worry. That's a huge worry, and it's not the only worry. So we've got Brexit to deal with, one, and the other one coming down the line really fast at us is deposit return scheme, and all the devolved governments have got their own plans. So that's quite a worry, because if we start to have to, all of us in the UK label our stock for all of the UK, not for specific devolved governments within the UK. Yeah. So how these schemes unwind is a big problem. And then fourthly, for the fine wine traders, as you probably know, the WSTA held a conference for fine wine traders on how they'll be able to transact without certain agreements between governments, and that's a concern as well. So the work that the WSTA is doing has never been more important. So we have a number of fires to focus on.
Yeah, but I think it's an important point though to make, that although the world is 100% focused on COVID, to stress that actually the WSTA, and there are measures being taken within the UK to try and make sure the wine supply chain can work as best as it can do come 21 for the rest of the world.
I have to say, I was just pre-COVID. I was luckily visiting our suppliers in Australia and New Zealand, or a number of them, and I was really begging them to get their relevant associations to work with Miles and his team to make sure that we work in concert to make sure that that the rules that the politicians do put in place are sensible ones. So if there are people who want to understand what that is, the WSTA would be very pleased to hear, because if we don't, we could get properly strangled in red tape, and that won't make our industry any easier. So yeah.
Just finally then, just in terms of looking at where we go from, when we somehow get our heads above the parapet. What lessons do you think that you personally have learned perhaps over the last few period of time, and as an industry as a whole, what do you feel as though the industry as a whole should have learned really over this time?
Well, I go back to the point I made right at the start of this chat, Richard. I don't think anybody could ever have foreseen the circumstance. So, I don't think there's any lessons from that particularly, apart from the fact in this country we seem to need to be prepared for a shock every couple of years, whatever happens. So, I'm never going to sit comfortably again for the rest of my working life, because I always know around the corner there's something very, very unexpected coming. So I think being prepared for the unexpected is one critical lesson. Don't get comfortable, because you'll get shot in the backside. Two is, I hope that the way we've come together as a community, we've talked about the UK specifically being a very tight, even if it's competitive, but a friendly, tight, collegiate industry. And I think if we can retain that humanity with each other, we'll be a better place for it. But then I think it comes down to the age-old thing of money. I think that what it's reminded me is how important having a properly financially structured business is, because you've got to prepare for the unexpected, or be prepared for the unexpected. And I think, and then lastly, in my own little world of the business that I run, I think it's just reminded me again about how the sense of community within our business is absolutely critical. And I've been really delighted, amazed, proud of the way that my team have pulled together, be they working or be they on furlough, to help each other, and be incredibly proud of the business they work in. And for those of them who are on furlough, who call me, which quite a lot of them do, they're all desperate to come back to work, to do the right thing. It just makes me, it just was, the lesson to myself again is don't take any of that for granted. In fact, I wrote an article on LinkedIn, which is up there, and I titled it "The Power of Relationships," because I think relationships in the business that we operate in are absolutely paramount.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I know there's lots of producers who'll be watching this who work with Bibendum. I'm sure we'll mirror those comments. And from my point of view, well, thank you for your time, obviously, but also, yeah, just pass on my best to you and the rest of the Bibendum team, because you're one of our most important companies within the business, not only in the UK but internationally. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be able to meet up soon.
Yeah, well, I look forward to that. But I send my best to everybody who does listen to that. And what I want to take the opportunity to say is, don't forget the UK as we come out of this. We are going to be open for business. We love great wines. We love working with all the people from around the world, and look forward to doing so face to face as soon as we can.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, Richard. See you soon.
Thank you.